water testing, obviously it's an important ingredient, and it's something that we take for granted that the town water, in fact, is of, if you are using town water, is of a quality that meets the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. Doesn't always occur, and it also doesn't always occur not because of the quality of the water coming in, but if you're are you getting this water in and you're storing it, or you're chilling it, or any sort of a storage unit is immediately going to have problems because you're going to get bacterial build-up, a slime biofilm on the sides, on the bottom. Have you ever got into a swimming pool that's never been chlorinated and felt that slippery bottom? That's biofilm. Now what you can do is you can throw a ton of chlorine into a pool. It'll kill all the free-flowing bugs in the water, doesn't penetrate the slime, and within a week to 2 weeks your bug levels come up again. You have to strip that slime off. You've got to drain it. You've got to get in there with a gurney or a soft sponge and lift that off and wash it out. Okay, water must meet the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. Historically, there were 3 tests in there: a plate count, total coliforms, and fecal coliforms and/or E. coli. And that's what used to be required for all premises to test all those 3 bugs. In the old guidelines for a in chlorinated water, you had to have a plate count less than 100, total coliforms less than 1 per 100 mils, and fecal coliforms or E. coli less than 1 per 100 mils. That's all gone out the window. In the 2011 edition, they've only now just got fecal coliforms and/or E. coli. So that's all you need to be testing to meet the requirements of acceptable water quality in a food premises. Okay? No one can tell you to do more than that. With the exception of probably the Department of Agriculture if you're doing export, which I'll mention in a moment. Fecal coliform acceptable limit less than 1. There are some Department of Agriculture will require on people who are exporting to do some plate counts at 22 degrees and some other tests. However, occasionally, if there has been a problem in your plant, an EHO might come along and say, look, and they do it especially with hydroponics and some of these places, you're constantly getting Listeria monocytogenes, Salmonella, something being found in your premises. I'm going to need you to test that incoming water for looking for specific pathogens. Okay, quite often E. coli will be there as well, but not necessarily all the time. But generally, it's only that fecal coliforms E. coli is all you really need. Okay, so with each of these sections, we'll talk about the sample collection at the same time. So for fecal coliforms and E. coli, we're generally looking at about that size, 120 ml container. Usually it should have sodium thiosulfate in it, which is the same one we use when we're testing for Legionella. Sodium thiosulfate is designed to remove the chlorine that's in the water. There's a lot of controversy about whether or not it really should be used, but at the moment it's in the Australian standard, so I have to tell you it should be there. And it'll be on the label that it contains sodium thiosulfate. With the actual, wrong button. Oh great, that went on. With ice samples, remember we have to turn a sample of ice into water. So we need about a 400 or a 250 ml to 400 ml container of ice so that when it gets to us it's melted and turned into water. Okay, so we need double the size container when if you're testing an ice sample. And again, ice has to meet not the drinking water standard, but the food standards code, and that again is E. coli for that test. So just remember, if you are required to test ice, we need double that volume. It's always best to collect a sample from Monday to Thursday, Friday, depending on where it's going. Can be an overnight transport problem. And overnight couriers are renowned for not getting things through to the lab, won't deliver on a Saturday. If it comes in via us, we actually use the pathology, Southern Clades Pathology, and they will deliver. They deliver to us on Saturday mornings. But in general, it's best to do it Monday to Friday. Because most labs, and certainly us, we start at about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning for processing samples. We'd really prefer you collected all your water samples around about 10 o'clock. That gives us up until 10 o'clock the next day to actually process the samples, because all samples need to be collected, processed within 24 hours of collection, okay? Water samples need to be refrigerated straight away after you collect them, and they need to be transported refrigerated as well. Okay, so when, and as I said, it should be within 24 hours. So what we will do is, and what, if not most labs, or you'll have to organise yourself, is that they provide eskies, soft-packed eskies of varying sizes, and we supply them with ice bricks as well. So you freeze your ice brick overnight, take your jar, fill out your paperwork, that goes into that esky, and it's transported refrigerated. Okay? There's a bit of controversy on how do you take a water sample. Should you be doing a first catch, turn on the tap and take it? Or if you follow the Australian guidelines for water collection, apart from you have to flame the tap and then run it for a certain time and then take the water sample, I would basically say, how do you use the water? You know, if every time you go to use that water, you actually have a little flamethrower in your hand and you burn the tap and then you turn it on and run it for a couple of minutes and then you use that water, that's how you should collect the sample. But if you don't use it, you want to know if that water quality is okay. So however you use it, take the sample that way. So if you just go and then turn on the tap and that's how you use it, do that. If you get absolutely rotten results, you might want to do a second sample where you flush and find that, okay, it's clean after I flush it, but at the first time it's not. So you're going to set up a new procedure. Whenever we come to use this thing, we're going to run it for 30 seconds. Okay? But you need to know that however you routinely use it, that's how we want to test it. And you have to know that it's safe. Okay?